Sorry about that. I didn't think this interview would take this long.
Wait, how many of those do you have?
That's not important right now. I think you were about to give your account on the night of the murders.
Oh, that's right. Where was I?
You said that you ran into them.
Thanks. As I was saying, I was able to detect where those three were by sensing their love. When I ran into them, they were of course screaming at the sight of me. At that point, I didn't care if they caught me or let me go. Getting me out of that place was the only thing that mattered. Heck, I didn't care if they ended up turning me in. Any equestrian prison was bound to be better than that asylum. However, there was one thing I'd forgotten about pony behavior.
And that being...
The old fight-or-flight response. You see, the moment they saw me and started screaming, one of them, a large Pegasus, knocked me to the ground. The big guy pinned me down and started yelling, "What the Tartarus are you doing here, bug?" I could tell that he wasn't in the mood to listen. However, the other two, a stallion and a scrawny-looking mare, suggested that they should stop with their exploring and go get you guys. And you know what? I told them that I would be overjoyed if they did, much to their confusion. I pleaded with them to have me arrested so I could leave this place. Unfortunately, they quickly assumed that I had, as the mayor put it, gone cuckoo, but they all agreed that they should get the police so that they would get rid of me. They decided to tie me up and have two of them look after me while the third would go get help. The mayor used her magic to levitate me onto one of the beds and strap me down. Meanwhile, the Earth Pony Stallion volunteered to go into town to find you guys. I kept pleading with them to just take me to the police with them, but they insisted that they couldn't trust a changeling.
I assume that this was Carrot Bits you're talking about.
Well, he did have some carrots as a cutie mark, so I guess so. Once they wheeled me into a room, the Earth Pony said that he would be back soon before he left. While they waited, the mayor took out her camera and started taking pictures of me and the decayed insides of the building.
That's right. We've heard about one of them bringing a camera. At least now we know who it belonged to.
The other tried to interrogate me, asking me what I was doing there and all. I told him exactly what I told you from the start, that I was sent there to scout for the Queen and needed a hiding place. He stopped listening to me when I mentioned the first nurse I saw in the lobby, saying that I was lying, that there was no such thing as ghosts, and that all of it must have been some changeling trick to get out. The mayor, however, started to notice how serious and afraid I sounded. She debated with the Pegasus about whether or not they should actually stay and wait. Around that point was when the screaming started.
Screaming?
I think it was from the Earth Pony. We could hear his voice calling out for help. The two other ponies panicked, and the unicorn volunteered to go see what was wrong. I begged them that whatever was going on, the ponies in white probably already got him, and that there wasn't anything they could do. But that mare insisted that she'd go and find their friend, that they weren't going to abandon him. She went off, asking the other to stay with me.
And she never came back?
I have no idea what became of her, but it wasn't long before she started screaming too. However, unlike the other guy, her yell didn't last long. The last pony remaining, the Pegasus, was reeking with fear, now unsure of what to do himself. I told him that he should close the heavy doors and hope that none of the lunatics, or worse, one of the doctors, would find us. He accused me of playing some trick on them, as if I was the one that was doing this. I asked him how I could do anything when I was tied down. Looking back, I think we should have been more quiet, when I realized too late that the sense of dread was growing. The door slowly opened. To my horror, two figures, a nurse and Dr. Redcross. I screamed for the Pegasus to flee, but he looked at the door and told me that he didn't see anyone there. The nurse went up to him with a needle in her aura and stuck it in his neck. He collapsed quickly afterwards to the floor. Dr. Redcross instructed the nurse to bring in a wheelchair and have the intruder punished like the others. Once this was done, the monster turned to me. "You were trying to escape from my hospital, weren't you?" he asked. and I bet that those were your accomplices. When I denied this, he slapped me. "Don't lie to me," he yelled. "You still haven't received your punishment either." He told me to stay put while he went to get his tools to finish the job. I screamed for help. The last thing I wanted was for him to come back to hammer those needles in my eyes. I don't think I'd cried that hard since I was a little hatchling, afraid of the dark. I know how you ponies view us changelings, telling your children bedtime stories of us hiding in their closets or beneath their beds. But what no one tells you is that even monsters feel fear. The thought of those needles piercing my skull and killing my brain, murdering my mind with every tap of that hammer. It was absolutely terrifying. Thankfully, he never came back, and you ponies found me. Even though I was arrested and dragged out through the lobby in chains, I never felt more free. It was like stepping out of the dark abyss of the sea into the cold open air. I could finally sense and feel the warmth of light, of positive emotions again. Even with the relief of survival, though, I found no joy in it. Tell me, Detective Hoof Print, how do you go back to a world that you've lost the map to? How do you dream at night and not return to the tortures of what they've done and could have done? At times, I wonder if I'm really out of sanctuary. Even here, I can't help but see ghosts in the shadows or in the white uniforms. Tell me, did I really see these doctors and patients, or have I gone insane? Even scarier still, who really hurt me? Them or me?
Is that everything?
I do have one question to ask.
That being...
Do you think that I killed them without me knowing?
There was a pause before the detective answered.
I'm not sure, unless there's anything else you wanted to tell me.
I'm tired. I don't want to talk about the asylum anymore. Other than I wish it would be burned to the ground. How long am I going to be here?
Well, if you are deemed innocent, the charge of a triple murder will of course be removed. However, since you've admitted that you somewhat spied on us, you will still be under equestrian custody until someone from higher up determines if you should go back to your hive or not.
I understand.
Now, if you'd excuse me, I think that this interview is over.
This is Detective Hoof Print of the Filliedelphia PD. The time is 5:46. The date is October the 23rd. Case file number 1296-281. Location is at the lobby of Sanctuary's Mental Hospital. Well, we've been so busy tearing through this hospital for overlooked clues that I never had the time to update this case. Since this place is so huge, it's taken a ton of every pony's time trying to figure out what's going on. Let me start by stating that this case is an odd one. The more answers we found, the more questions that have been raised. For starters, I've already submitted Resto the Changeling's testimony onto one tape for evidence. The recording has already been studied by criminal psychiatrists and even a group of local historians. The psychiatrists are completely bewildered at the recording. On one hoof, it seems that he was probably only here for a few days, meaning that it's extremely unlikely that he went insane and made the entire experience up. Not only that, but they pointed out that for a guy that's been tortured, he seemed to hold a mostly coherent conversation. Yet on the other, they noted that he sounded very sincere, and the bits where it talked about his tortures did house a ton of sadness in it. Even when they put his recording through a lie detector, it came out as completely honest. One of the psychiatrists noticed that Resto mentioned about mold in the asylum. It's for this reason that each of us is wearing a mask. Apparently, the toxic fungi and mold in this place has been known to poison lungs, the immune system, and the brain. It's possible that Resto could have been suffering from hallucinations that seemed too real for him. But then the historians that studied the history of this place had a finding of their own. This is where things get a bit eerie. As it turns out, before this place was shut down for good, there was a certain Dr. Redcross who had died about 4 years before its closing. Newspapers at the time speculated that he had been abusing his power, and some even speculated that he was tied to some murders as well. However, as far as we know, neither of those have been confirmed since this was a privately run hospital. And even creepier still, apparently this place doubled as an orphanage for unwanted foals. Clue-wise, we found the drawings that Resto had described in his interview. With some testing, the lab had concluded that these drawings were very recent, and the hoof writing doesn't match that of the changelings. So, even with all of this new evidence, there are still some unanswered questions. For example, if Resto's experience was all a hallucination, how did he come to know about the supposed history? And if the discovered drawings were drawn by anyone but Resto, and thereby were created by somebody else, how did they know so much about the changeling's life and his hallucinations? And there's one more sobering thing. In the basement, we've also found the remains, or the skeleton, of a filly in the morgue. From what we could read from her hoof tag, her name was Pumpkin Spice. She was about 5 to 7 years old when she died. Judging by the marks on her bones, it looked like she was stabbed to death. And it should be noted that her bones were disturbed somewhat. And we've also found some hoof prints in the dust. I honestly don't know what to make of it. It's obvious that something happened here at Sanctuaries. The real question, of course, is what?